as it moves forward, and maybe it's an issue for the committee to deal with or whatever, but y'all need to be aware of that if we start talking about Inlet Beach, because there's an underlying problem with that concept there. That's all.
All right, thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Brian, you want to answer that?
Yeah, occasionally the charter fishing industry.
We can't hear you. I can't hear you from there.
The mic must not be working right. Occasionally the charter fishing industry does use the Inlet Beach launch, and that's when they cannot launch at Grayton. I don't have the exact statistics, but it's not as frequent as I think Mr. Jaff has indicated. But sometimes they do park on the beach and they get attention from us, but that could easily be rectified because they have a permit, and we can make it so that they understand that if you're going to launch at Inlet, you're going to have to make provisions for launching your boat and taking your boat and trailer somewhere else. So those are problems that are easily, like I say, rectified or corrected.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
I'm sorry to interrupt you earlier, but this did include Inlet Beach because
Okay.
those are two dedicated launch areas that we have.
But this, we're just talking about, we're just having public input on it.
Correct.
Sir, did you want to speak?
Yes. My name is Walt Hartley, Hartley. I own and operate Snorkel 30A. We run snorkel tours out there. I'm the one that presented to the TEC advisory committees. And just based on the comments and to clarify some things for you guys, I'd want to let you know we do have a warehouse, a little headquarters that's 10 minutes between Inlet and Grayton Beach, and we'd be launching the boat, getting off the beach so we're not taking up any space, but still able to respond to emergencies or anything like that. And also to your comment, Mr. Chapman, about I know the oil and everything like that that's coming off of the boats. I've been out on the snorkel reefs almost every day this summer, and we cut all kinds of lines off of the reefs. We clean up trash every time we're out there. We're constantly, advising people on safe and responsible, stewardship practices in order to conserve our marine resources. And we just really like to have the opportunity to get folks out there in a safe, fun, and convenient way where we can share all this stuff. So thank you, guys.
I would advise you to be at the meeting.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Brook, B-R-O-O-K-E. I just wanted to ask, are the commercial fishermen who launch on the beach and will the scuba divers who launch on the beach be treated as vendors and pay some fee for using the public beach?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none? All in favor of having a public hearing or a workshop, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Sir?
And my nay is mainly because we've already got a significant impact at Grayton. Sounds like we got a problem at Inlet. And I just can't see putting additional impact out there.
Yes, sir. Next item, request to approve task order TDC 19-002, Rev 1, in an amount of $4,100 for conceptual plans of Walton Dunes project. This is Dewberry's, they're on our engineering pool. They were selected to be the engineer of record for this project that you approved at a previous meeting. That's the price they submitted to do the conceptual design. Dewberry has already been working on the designs, so tonight we're asking to approve their task order amount, as well as allow us to schedule a community workshop to present and discuss the conceptual designs. And that was also part of your previous direction. Just wanted to make sure. I've tentatively reserved this room for July 25th at 5 p.m. And so we're seeking approval on that tonight.
Motion to approve.
Second for discussion. Brian, you brought, for this Walton Dunes, or I think proposed about 3 different designs.
Yes, ma'am.
So all 3 will be
Right. So
discussed?
At the last meeting, there was some specific direction to include in some additional conceptual designs. So we'll have those, as well as some of the previous designs that we had, and they'll be open for this public workshop. We'll take in additional input from all concerned citizens who want to attend, and from that, we'll come back with however many conceptual designs it takes to present to y'all to this body to say, this is the one we'd like for you to continue on with, or, maybe it's not continue on. Also, the public workshop, as part of this project, Public Works is doing the sidewalk design from our parking area up to 30A. We'll have the 60% design plans for that to show. So far, I think everything's in concert with what was discussed by this board at a previous meeting as to what their desires would be. Sort of limited on what you can do on a sidewalk on the side of the road. So
Basically,
we'll have all that out there as one big project. I think we'll get the input we need, and we can then massage that into conceptual designs that would be appropriate, that this body will have the opportunity to say yay or nay on.
We're going to, most of those comments that we heard, those will be addressed. The comment, also the comments, the safety, the signage, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Any more discussion? Any discussion from the audience? Ma'am? Now your time.
What time did he say? I'm sorry.
5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Yes, ma'am, July 25th at 5 p.m.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioners, item number 42 is the public hearing on the high-impact tourism development tax. So we would need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor to open the public hearing say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay.
Commissioners, just briefly to introduce the ordinance, so we had previously received direction from the board to draft this ordinance and receive approval from the Department of Revenue, which we have received, both that we qualify for levying the high-impact tourist development tax, and also they've approved our ordinance. As it's currently drafted, the tax would become effective on October 1st of this year. I believe that Jay has had some conversations with the clerk's office, and they believe that it would be better if we impose the tax on January 1st of 2020, but that's up to you.
That is correct. That is a request of the clerk's office, and I told them that I would carry that message forward to you for your consideration. So obviously, it's for you to decide, but also in speaking to some bed tax collectors, obviously not all of them because there are so many, but they asked that we hold off until implementing it until after fall break. So it might be prudent, based on the bed tax collectors and the clerk's office, to do it January 1, but that's ultimately your decision.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the audience? Bob, come ahead.
Bob, we're going to put you a chair right out there for you, so you won't be calling over everybody.
Bob Brook, B-R-O-O-K-E. I'm a little confused. I guess maybe I wasn't paying adequate attention. Did you just vote on a
Opening.
workshop for or something to discuss the tax, or what was, did
No.
you vote on it?
So we just opened the public hearing for the board to take public comment and then approve.
Oh,
the ordinance.
on the tax?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then I do have a question. What exactly would that money, is that money able to be spent on by the county or by the
Any
TDC?
expenditures authorized by Chapter 125. So any of the expenditures enumerated in the tourist development tax statute.
Does that include infrastructure?
Yes, it can. It can also include acquisition of beachfront property.
Parking garages, all that sort of thing?
Yes,
But it
So-
can be used on infrastructure.
Yes.
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 Does it have to be purely for the tourists' benefit, or can it be for the local benefit
So
as
any
well?
expenditure of the tourist development tax does have to be geared towards the tourists, and there has to be a finding made by this board that the expenditure of that funds is primarily for the benefit of the tourists, yes, and the promotion of tourism to the county.
Okay. I'm not sure that I would approve Well, look at it, I don't get to approve, but I'd certainly like this to, I mean,
Look at it this way.
if it benefits both, then it might be worth considering. But
And
if
I
it-
might have misspoken. I mean, there can be an incidental benefit to, you know,
Well,
all
I
citizens
don't-
of the county.
As a resident of the county and a taxpayer and a voter here, I don't like to be considered incidental. I'd like to have a little bit more consideration for what
You should take
benefits
that up
me
with
and
the
not what
Florida
benefits the
legislature.
tourists.
The Florida legislature governs how we can use the tourist development
Well,
tax.
then I would urge you to reconsider and vote no on this. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay.
We just need a motion to close the public hearing.
Question
Sir.
before we do. Now, I don't recall if
Oh,
I
no.
made the motion as to whether it's
The
October.
effective date, I know, so we do need to adjust.
Well, I'll go
that.
ahead and make the motion to clean it up, that it'd be effective January 1st, 2020.
Second.
Any more discussion? Any discussion on that from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 43 is a,
Did we?
close?
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
thank you. Item number 43 is a request to approve the contract for the purchase of real property in Zune Allen with Richard Brothers LLC. I would like to point out for the board and also for members of the public that there are minor, very minor revisions to the contract, but I do want to point those out, and I have extra copies if anybody in the public would like to see it. It's just 3 changes, and they're very minor, but I do want to point those out so that we're clear. On the first page of the contract, the date for closing has changed. In the contract that was on your agenda packet, it said July 31st. That's been changed to August 16th. And then if you flip to the addendum, which should be the last 2 or 3 pages of the contract, paragraphs 3 and 4 changed. So paragraph 3 was changed to reflect the later date for us to consider the possible abandonment of Woodward Road. That would now, instead of July 26th, that would be August 13th, 2019. And it was, paragraph 3 was also changed to reflect the fact that we will not be abandoning the entirety of Woodward on Mr. Richard's property where Stinky's is located. There will be a small section in the northwest corner that we will not be abandoning, and that is so we can accomplish the Design E that you approved at the last board meeting. And then paragraph 5 was changed. Originally, it read that a temporary easement would be granted for 12 months. That's been changed to 18 months.
Okay. What's the board's wishes?
Motion to accept the contract.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion from the audience? Ms. Nielsen? Celeste, you'll be next.
My name is Mary Nielsen, Nielson. I'd like to read the email that I sent to the Board of County Commissioners this morning for the benefit of the public. Stinky stinks for the county and comes up roses for the Richard Brothers and Stinkies. But what about the citizens and vacationers needing to park to access the beach access? This is just one more dirty deal. Per Walton County Property Appraiser website, the subject property contains 0.526 acres, which is approximately 22,912.56 square feet. The sales price of $2,075,000 gives a gross price per square foot of approximately $90.56 to the seller. But this deal also comes with many extra restrictions and costs other than just developing the subject property into a parking lot for a county-owned Gulfront Beach Park. The devil is in the details of the addendum. For example, number 8, the new public parking depicted on option Option E shall be treated by the buyer as public parking with no restrictions on use by any member of the public, including the customers or staff of Stinky's. There are too many costly and restrictive terms to make this deal a good deal for the county's residents, bed tax collectors, and visitors paying those taxes, or any member of the public who has a right to park in a public lot and use a public beach. After our county commissioners just purchased a few months ago a 2.3-acre parcel on 393 at $37 per square foot with no adverse terms attached, which would hold way more cars than this tiny parcel. The money being used to purchase Richard's property could be applied to making 393 a great parking area and use a shuttle to ferry beachgoers to the Dune Allen parks, more than one. Let the Richard brothers build a parking lot on their own 0.526 acres for their customers and staff. That is what should have been done years ago. Thank you.
Celeste?
I want to thank you for correcting the abandonment. I was at the technical review committee last week, and I said, you know, this isn't right, and
Yeah, and I'm sorry, can you pause it so Celeste's time won't be taken? And Celeste, I'm sorry, I meant to call you and explain that. So that was my mistake, that the technical review committee, the advertisement was for the entirety of Woodward. And the reason I did that was because we did not yet have a legal description for that portion of Woodward that we would be retaining. And typically, whenever we advertise something, it's better to advertise more than what we're going to ultimately be doing than do less and there be a discrepancy. So that's why I went ahead and had the entire, but I can see why that was very confusing, and I apologize for that. That was
and
my fault.
then I was concerned when I didn't see any mention of a correction in this addendum. So anyway, so thank you very much for correcting that. Also, and I was, another concern that I had emailed y'all was the 12 months. And now, even at 18 months, let's realistically, I mean, let's look at how long it's taken to do anything across the street there on the beach access. So just answer, what will happen if, you know, I mean, let's face it, construction, whether it's government or private, even on the best of days and years, it drags on. So what happens if, you know, and you can't do any work between, you know, in the summertime, that's in the contract. So what happens if it goes to 19 months and the new road isn't there? Can Mr. Richard put a toll road on there and charge all these people to come in and out? Can he just block it? I mean, I don't see why there can't be just, when the new road is complete, then, you know, the abandonment will be completed. I'm just saying, I mean, if I live back there, because I live in Beach Highlands, I'd certainly be concerned with that. One other thing, it was no small task to get a copy of the Serenity at Dune Allen development order and the right-of-way maintenance agreement between Walton County and the Serenity at Dune Allen. I want to make this development order a part of a record here, because it does say here several times that road improvements from 38, well, in here it cites that Woodward will be connected to 30A, and I know that that has been already addressed, but in the event there could be a change in the future, I want it to be very clear that that is in the development order. And I question the right-of-way maintenance agreement. You know, I read it, maybe, you know, I don't know if you've looked at this, Sydney, because I'm not an attorney, but to me, this looks like there should be some sort of an agreement with the county if there are any changes to any of these roads. So I'm just going to turn this in for the record, okay? And thank you for making those changes.
Go ahead, Bob. Ms. Harris, you'll be next.
Bob Brooke, B-R-O-O-K-E. I guess this still fits into what I had said earlier about parking and a plan for parking. It's another one of those, let's grab a place and put parking places in there. I looked at the price, I did a little bit of arithmetic, and found out that now this doesn't include the cost of any improvements, just the purchase price. The cost per parking place is $64,843.75. I think that's a little extravagant for parking. In fact, I think it's totally unreasonable and not in the interest of the taxpayers of Walton County or whoever's paying the bill. Does anybody know what the cost of the improvement is going to be on the lot for actual parking?
What'd you say, Bob?
Does anybody know what the...
Talk a little bit loud.
I'm sorry, does anyone know, anybody on the board know what the cost of the improvements to make the lot suitable for parking will be?
No, we don't.
Is anybody curious?
Yeah, we are. We've got our engineers working on it.
Did anybody ask?
Sure. We've asked how many parking places we can get, what do we think it'll cost, and the engineers have come back to us and given us preliminary numbers, but this is a piece of property that is directly across from a beach access. And had it not been across from a beach access, we would have no desire to buy it. We're adding another, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, around 35 parking places? 32 parking places for the beach access.
Well, it seems to me the real benefit of this goes to the people who own Stinky's Fish Camp. You're providing them with employee and customer parking, and you're paying market value for it. So I don't understand why you would do this, because I don't see it being in the interest of the people of Walton County. And I'd urge you to not proceed on this and to vote no.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bob. Ms. Harris?
Cindy, I was glad you said that you can spend TDC bed tax money on anything to do with tourism. I think the next step is that somebody go to the governor and be sure that we understand that we got a $7 million piece of property that hadn't provided anything for tourism, that went to J. Odom, because it's still sitting there as dirt and water and gravel, and it's a seaside shuttle for employees. And I'm not really sure that counts as tourism, but this stinks. Richard's paid $365,000 in 2012 for this piece of property. And we're going to pay him $2,075,000, and he still has the same property for his parking for his employees and the people at his restaurant. Now, if you can convince me all those people are tourists that eat there, they're not, because a lot of people like me eat there all the time that are residents down here. This stinks. Something bad is going on here, and somebody needs to feel really bad, because I don't think you'd pay any of those people that his property's been on here tonight that kind of profit for a little bitty lot. The $64,000 a parking place, y'all have lost your mind.
Barbara?
My name is Barbara Morano, 12 Dock Trail. There's been a lot of talk about buying property for parking, and of course, my neighbor right next to me says, why are we buying parking? There's no room at the beach. But my question is with this, I'm going to call it the Stinky's parking lot. Why are we borrowing money from Mr. Richard at a prime? Why are we borrowing over $800,000? Can you answer that for us? Why does it have to come from him? Why don't we just go to the bank? Why don't we just use cash?
Del, you want to answer that?
No one's going to answer that?
Yes. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay.
So to extend our dollars, We talked to Mr. Richard, and he offered a loan, and we brought that to the board, and the board accepted those terms.
I'm sure Mr. Richard would take cash, that was one of the options previously.
Yeah.
So we're paying prime interest then, obviously, on top of that loan, correct? It's prime interest. Okay, well, I personally don't disagree. I disagree with that. Lee Moore came up, Jim Bagby, Bob Brooks, Dave Rushcott, Susan Harris, Celeste Cobina. Every one of those citizens care, and I know you care too. But we talked about the transportation master plan. That's been buried. I'd like to recommend that you meet with Ms. Moore, talk to her. She has a consultant. She understands a little bit more. I think we need more of a transportation master plan instead of buying all these parking lots and spending almost $8 million. That would be my recommendation.
Anyone else? Mr. Bagby? Ma'am, you in the back will be next.
Jim Bagby, B-A-G-B-Y. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
Could you talk just a little
Sure,
louder?
be glad to. I don't want to talk too loud, but, this goes back to the same point we made earlier. What's the plan? And I want to thank Jay for coming up and telling us we're out of money that you had set aside to buy stuff. And oh, by the way, maybe now we ought to come back and look at priorities. Now's the time, after we've bought, 15, 20 pieces of property, now we ought to come back and look at the priorities of which ones we're going to develop. You're doing this backwards. And I agree with Suzanne and Bob. To spend over $60,000, and oh, by the way, you have to relocate all the utilities that's under Woodward. Oh, by the way, you have to do all the improvements in that parking lot. Oh, by the way, the seller can put up bollards to keep the public out of his parking lot, but I didn't see in there where you can put up bollards, or you can put up a wall, or you can put up something to keep his staff or his customers out of the public beach access parking lot. The other thing I didn't see is there's some other undeveloped properties around there. I get the point that it's near the beach access, but it's not the only undeveloped parcel near that beach access. Have you looked at any of those others? Because you can probably get them for a lot less, and you wouldn't have the controversy that you have right now, where it just looks like you're caving in and buying Stinky's a parking lot. And I love Jim Richard. I've known him for years. I eat there all the time. But I valet my car just like everybody else, and you shouldn't be building him a parking lot with public money, and you shouldn't be paying him prime interest. My God, he's making out like a bandit. Please stop.
Jacqueline Fudge, FUDGE, 89 Baird Road, Santa Rosa Beach, Beach Highlands, First Edition. First of all, thank you for making the corrections on the contract. That's great. And I want to thank Commissioners Anderson, Glidewell, and Nipper for taking time with me to discuss this matter in person and by phone, and to Chance Powell and Jay Tusa for their time to discuss options as we move forward with this project. As I think you all know, I've expressed concerns about public safety. I continue to have those concerns. When we look at the contract, I do have a question, if we can pause for just a second, on number 6. It says, buyer will be responsible for all stormwater design and retention for impervious surface area, buyer being Walton County, correct? So we're paying to design and create the water retention and stormwater underneath property that is going back to Mr. Richard?
That's my understanding, but, I think, oh, sorry.
Do we have a price tag on that?
It's my understanding from the engineers, and I could be wrong, but that would be easy to subsume in the design for the parking lot next door.
Okay, but I'm just asking the question about what that will cost the taxpayers, because it was a big question mark in my mind when I read this. Also, when I had the meeting with Chance and Jay, one of the things that Chance brought up was the state Florida statute. And so I'm not that familiar with state Florida statutes, so I called the state of Florida Department of Transportation and asked questions. And I said, I need to understand, and I kind of want to know, and who should I talk to? They put me through to a senior counsel for DOT. And so he looked at this project with me online, on the satellite, we talked about it and everything, and I said, well, okay, he said county road, I'm like, okay, I get it. And then I said, okay, if this were to be a a road maintained by the state, how would you approach this? And they said, first thing we'd do would be a traffic study. Hello, been saying that for a while. And then he also said that he looked at the intersections of all the streets, and we talked about how this was all going to lay out, and he expressed concerns about safety as well. So I just want to reiterate my concerns. And one thing I don't think it's addressed in the contract, but what will happen to the school bus stops during the construction period? There are school bus stops at Woodward and also at Hilltop. So I hope that that's taken into consideration as the construction of the project moves forward if it's approved. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Lisa Boushey, B-O-U-S-H-Y.
Listen, please, a little bit louder.
Okay, I can yell.
Yeah. For some reason tonight, I'm having a hard of hearing.
Believe me, I can relate to that
I've got a
myself.
sinus
It says
problem.
don't touch it. I was trying to be a good citizen, but anyway. Okay, all right. The one thing that has not really been mentioned much in most of these workshops and discussions is, I know you've heard the description about the blind curve. You've heard a lot about the traffic and the various entrances onto 30A, but if I'm not mistaken, I asked a specific question about, was this going to alleviate the right-of-way parking, or were we still going to probably have right-of-way parking in addition to all these other things that are going on? And unless I misunderstood the answer, it's that we probably will still have right-of-way parking as well. It's just that it'll be the, most likely it'll be the nice parking in time that the TDC's been doing, at Grayton and there along 30A that's going on. But it really means then that this is actually not only supplemental, but it's not going to take any of the cars off the right-of-way road. So that creates further safety issues in my mind, because you've got, cars parked all along the road. You've got cars coming and going from driveways, from the beach access, from Stinkies, from the neighborhoods that are right in that area. It's a lot of coming and going in a very small section of 30A. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else? Sir, come on up. Please state your name and spell your last name.
Michael Smith, S-M-I-T-H, and I heard a lot of folks speak tonight. This was an issue, and I live in Renity, and it's a compromise, and it's a give and take, and we're okay with the compromise, that the compromise that is being made. I am building out there, so I've sold most of the homes, and the homeowners come to me and they ask me, and I said I'd come and ask some questions. One was, we don't understand the difference between a right-of-way and an easement. And while we're abandoning the right-of-way and getting an easement to use, does that give the fire marshal and the sheriffs the same rights in order to keep that road open for us to access our neighborhood?
Yes.
It does? Yes. Okay, I'll go back and I'll tell our homeowners that. Second was more of a question. I saw that the construction period got increased from 12 months to 18 months, but it does eliminate the 6 months or yes, I think the two periods for 2 summers that construction cannot be done on. Are y'all comfortable that that allows the county the sufficient time to get that made?
So, I mean, Chance and Charlie would be the best ones to speak to that, but I talked to Charlie yesterday, and we felt that 18 months would give them sufficient time to complete the work.
And that's y'all's decision to make. The homeowners just, in a perfect world, would like for the abandonment to be done to coincide when the new road is in place.
Right, so the contract provides for the temporary easement
Right.
during the term of the construction. So the idea is that no one's access would be cut off while the new
Right.
improvements were being made.
We understand that's the concept. We just want to make sure that that's not a tight margin, that's an abundance of caution, and that there shouldn't be any issues.
That's my understanding, but, I mean, Chance and Charlie can certainly correct me.
They'll be
if I'm
here in
wrong.
just a second.
And if I am wrong, then we can fix it, or we need to fix it.
Just, we eat at Stinky's, we enjoy them, but again, it's an adversarial with the use of the road. And the second, the parking in the right-of-way on Thursday, just when you do try and leave, when Stinky's employees are parked just north of the walkway, you can't see the oncoming cars. It would be nice if the additional parking that they're getting, if they'd commit to not parking in that right-of-way, if that's possible. We are working with them to give them a lot more parking to use. We leave there on a daily basis, and I can't tell you the number of times we take a chance of pulling out because a pickup truck's parked in that right-of-way, and you can't see over or around the pickup truck. If it was limited to Honda, we could probably do that. But at this point, it's a matter of when and not if that somebody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chance and Charlie out there. Fred, you'll be next.
So Chance, you're really on the spot because I talked to Charlie yesterday, not
Okay.
you about this, but I guess the questions that have come up, I'm not sure if you could hear us back there. Originally, we were going to be given 12 months to complete the work, but now there's a provision that we would do no work between Memorial Day and Labor Day, so the time to complete the work for the temporary easement has been increased to 18 months.
Would there be a problem with just terminating the temporary easement once construction was complete?
I'm sorry?
Would there be a problem with terminating the temporary easement when the construction was complete for the improvements?
We can make that change if Mr. Richard's okay with it. I mean,
It's,
The question is, how long do you think it'll take?
well, the tough thing is that if, is it 18 months from today? Is it 18 months from
18 months from
executing the contract?
from the day that we close.
I mean, if,
That's in August.
Yeah, we could have 2 summers in there, and that's going to take away
Okay.
several months. I mean, it'd be nice if the temporary easement terminated at construction completion.
Okay.
One other thing that I wanted to mention in there was, I don't know how much opportunities we have to change it right now, but is that the existing access to Woodward Drive would be eliminated.
I mean, we can, so you guys, if you want to go forward with this tonight, you can put any conditions you want into it. I'll take it back to Mr. Richard's attorney, and if he approves them, then we're good, and if not, I'll bring it back to you again for you to decide.
Chance, would you repeat your last statement, because you're talking soft and I'm hard of hearing?
I just said if the a stipulation or whatever, however you want to word it, that the existing Woodward Drive access would be eliminated with the construction of the new Woodward Road access to 30A.
Oh, I mean, okay.
I mean, if we follow Plan E, then it is eliminated, but I just wanted to make sure that.
Well, that's what we're voting on right now.
Right, no, I mean, the idea was that
Okay.
Plan E is what is agreed upon by both parties, and that's in the contract, so if that was in Plan E,
Yep,
that should
okay.
already be covered.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
But if you would like for us to, I guess, go and see if we can terminate the easement at the same time construction is complete, I think they just want a timeline, so it's not indefinite, but, I mean, if you guys want to approve the contract with that change in the language, if Mr. Richard's attorney agrees to that one small, or Mr. Richard agree to that one small change, we're fine to execute the contract and go forward. If there's a disagreement, we'll bring it back at the next board meeting.
Well, this is going to go into next summer. We're going to lose 3 to 4 months of construction time next summer, and part of it this summer. So we could lose 4, 5 months of construction time, and to hold us to 18 months.
I would feel better if it was, if we decide to pass it, that we do have to the termination of the construction.
Okay, so all we would need to do is just, if you wanted to approve the contract as written, except that we would delete the last sentence in paragraph 5 and just add a new sentence stipulating that the temporary easement would terminate once construction is complete.
You willing to change your motion?
Yeah, I'll amend my motion to that.
And Danny, are you willing to amend your, okay? Thank you, Chance. Stay handy. Fred, come on up. Sir, you'll be next.
Thank you. Fred Trucker, Tricker. And I don't think anyone has mentioned the fact that this property's within the Coastal Dune Lake Protection Zone. So I guess the question is there any way that you can adhere to the requirements of the protection zone? Or is that an impossibility?
So we are not, and I don't know how to state this without trying to seem like I'm trying to pull something on you, but I'm not. We're adhering to the requirements of the Coastal Dune Lake Protection Zone, but in those requirements, there's an exemption for right-of-way, and this will be connected to the 30A right-of-way and parking off of that right-of-way. So we are adhering to those requirements.
So you're not really
It would just be not the same requirements that a private property owner would have to adhere to when they're constructing.
So the answer is you're not even going to try to adhere to the requirements?
To the requirements that would be required.
From an environmental point of view, protection of the coastal dune lakes is not a factor. Okay. I really hope you don't do this deal. I think it's a really bad deal for the county. There's a lot of money involved, very little benefit. But the one thing, if you do decide to approve it, we talked previously about the possibility of having paid parking. And if there's a significant payment required to park in that lot, then it might be a deterrent for some people to use it, other than the people that really need it for beach activities. So is that something you would consider as part of your motion?
We're looking into that.
Okay. You're not ready to make a commitment on it?
Well, we hadn't bought the property yet, Fred. So that's part of us. We're going to look into that, I promise you.
Okay.
Fred, Mr. Chair, Fred, before, I appreciate that because there's two things, and I've been doing a lot of research in the past month since we brought this property up. I do not think Mr. Richard ever had a development order that was denied, and that's something that you had mentioned.
Correct.
And I truly do believe if we buy this parcel as the stewards of that emblem, that we do need to abide by the Coastal Dune Lake Protection Zone. I think we need to start doing the right thing. I would like to hear it happen because if the property is purchased, I'd like to know that we do that for coastal dunes.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot that I had mentioned that previously, that we were told that there was not a denial for Mr. Richard to put parking on that property.
Right. And
that he decided to abandon that request.
Right, and then it's June 2011, I did a lot of research and pulled a lot of paperwork off Google, but you're right, and the development order not being denied is kind of like a linchpin of this downhill spiral of where we are, is personally how I feel.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Sir, you're next.
Jim Thurman, THURMAN, 324 Walton Way. Well, I didn't even come here for this, but I'm a
taxpayer of this county, and I'm a businessman. I'm a real estate investor across the country. Man, this guy's getting a heck of a deal, Commissioners. I'd like to sell y'all some property, and then you build my parking lot. You need to look into just what he said, because you denied his development plan. So what did he do? He turned right around, made a 800% profit selling you the property. Now you're going to build him the parking lot. You need to think about this. You're getting taken advantage of, and you need to think about it. I mean, I'd like to have this deal. This would be a great deal. Trust me, it'd be a great deal. But you're getting taken advantage of, and I'm sorry. I do this for a living. I want this deal. I want this deal. I'm going to start looking for Walton County property. But I live here. I don't really buy property here, but I'm telling you, this is a really good deal for the seller. Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir, in the back.
Sam Dansky, 138 Crescent Road at the end of Hilltop Drive. I have a question for Chance.
Chance?
At one of the workshops, Jay was real nice, and Chance here, they had options A and B. I'm not even sure what C and D was. They kind of slid E in. All of a sudden, there was an option E at the last meeting, the commissioners' meeting. Now, remember at that workshop, how I'd asked you, if you'll look at the monitor, back when we were at the Bridge Road, I said, well, how many parking spots is that taken away from this new parking lot? We need parking, right? That's the whole thing, we need parking. And we kind of agreed about 10 to 14 spots by having that road going across. So now I see Plan E that moves Woodward further west, and, you know, I think I can count probably, 10 to 14 more spots that are now missing out of the parking lot because we're moving Woodward further west. Where is Plan F? Do we have a Plan F? Where we don't move Woodward? Why are we moving Woodward? Anybody?
Chance? Go ahead.
I think I know the answer, but I just want to see if somebody else will give an answer.
I think we're moving Woodward over because that was a condition of the sale of the property.
There's also,
Mr. Chairman, I think we're bending over backwards. We've already seen that, how much we're offering. And by the way, we need more parking. I get it. We do. Anybody can see that. But this is just an awful deal. And Mr. Nick, I emailed you yesterday, and I understand you're a busy man. And I had some people ask me if there was a conflict of interest if you were to vote on this. Should you recuse yourself? Because
I discussed that with Mr. Nick.
And there's not a conflict of interest.
okay, so you've never sold seafood to any of the Richard restaurants?
Sorry, sir, Mr. Nick doesn't have any current business relationship.
Not current. I didn't say current, but his family does.
Over the last 2 years, I have not sold Mr. Richard any seafood for my business.
But you have in
Does
the
that answer your
past.
question?
For the last 2 years it does, but what about the past history?
In the last 2 years, I have not sold any
Sir, he's
seafood.
answered the question.
So he answered it for 2 years. I like Mr. Nick, I love his
Listen,
restaurant.
the attorney has addressed the issue. He doesn't have a conflict of interest, in her legal opinion.
Okay.
All right?
I appreciate it, and Mr. Gladwell, thank you for responding to my email a month ago. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come ahead, sir.
My name is Matthew Parker, P-A-R-K-E-R. I own a local civil engineering firm. I was the civil engineer that did the original design when Mr. Richard wanted to develop this property. It was not a parking lot. It was a retail store with associated parking. So it was a more intense development than what you're looking at here. There's been some confusion, I think, as to whether things were denied or not denied. And really, I believe both sides are right, because the project never got all the way to the county commission to be denied by the county commission, but the staff recommended denial on our first submittal, and we were working on addressing that. And as we were doing that, it really became clear that the highest and best use for this property was 2 single-family homes, which based on what's happening around there wouldn't be a problem. The county's got some tough problems that you guys are trying to solve. Bottom line is, you've got a draw there. People want to be there. There's beach access there. We need to accommodate it. A lot of people have been talking about doing parking studies and transportation studies and that sort of thing. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but the flip side to that is, by the time the study's done, the property that may or may not have been available is gone. Somebody's bought it and put a house on. Properties are turning over, people are purchasing them, and I personally think you're doing the exact right thing, the correct thing, to purchase property in locations where you know that there's going to be a draw of people. We got to accommodate these folks. So with that, I support the project, and it's tough decisions that you make, but we've got to provide parking for the beach access areas, and this is a perfect place to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Parker, let me ask you a question. What's the bigger draw? Would it be Stinky's Restaurant or the beach?
The beach, no doubt about it.
Right.
In my opinion.
Yeah, no further questions. I don't have more questions.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, what's the board's wishes?
Sid, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Number 8, where it says the new public parking depicted in option that shall be treated as public parking with no restrictions on the use by any member of the public, including customers. Does that line prohibit us from metering that parking?
Yes, it does. So if you want to strike that too?
I can't vote for it and it restricts us.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Okay. One thing you alluded to, council, is that this would become right-of-way property and we would have an exemption under the coastal dune setback.
Yes, sir.
But if I understand Commissioner Nipper, don't let me put words in your mouth,
I won't.
is that you want to adhere to the coastal dune setbacks as written today.
As required of private property owners.
As required as a private property owner. I think that is the amicable thing to do, and is the right thing to do for especially the 3 places in the world that have coastal dunes.
All right. With that being said, over $2 million for a piece of property that will only give us maybe only a third of whatever that drawing showed up there is just really out of sight. So if that's the way it's going to be, and that's the way this board's going to look at it in the future when we move forward, I'm saying let's kick it down the road too and forget it.
Please hold your applause. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay.
Nay.
Danny, I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, so that was the original motion?
With the add-in on.
Okay.
Danny, have you voted?
No, I haven't voted.
Do a roll call.
Mr. Nick, we're going to do a roll call. Do you vote yea or nay?
Yay.
Mr. Gladwell?
Nay.
Yea or?
Nay.
Okay.
Nay.
Nay.
Yea. Motion fails 3-2.
I would want to say there's too many restrictions, and that metered restriction, I mean, there's too many restrictions on the county.
If anybody wants to leave now, we'll take a minute or two for you to leave. I don't know if you want to or not, but whatever you want to do, we'll just take a minute. Okay, Mr. Glidewell.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We looked at some property a few meetings ago, and we moved it forward. So now I'd like to bring it back up. There's a statement in the packet, but I'd just like to say, there was some question a while ago about tourist development tax. Tourist development tax, in my understanding, is that it's to develop the tourist industry and to promote the tourist industry. That doesn't prohibit citizens from using those amenities, and that doesn't prohibit citizens from taking benefit from the things that we build. So even though we build it for tourists, that doesn't mean that myself as a citizen can't use them. So it's been the goal of the county to diversify our economy. It's vital that we do that so that what happened to us in the BP oil spill doesn't happen to us again. So you have to diversify the economy. We also need to diversify our tourist industry. So the parcel that we're talking about tonight is the golf garden parcel. And I've got Mr. Stanton here who's going to come up in a minute and describe what we're talking about. But what we're trying to do is to build an amenity, some multi-use gymnasium facilities, an aquatic center maybe, amphitheater, but things that we can use to diversify our tourist economy, amenities that we can use to draw people to the community. That being said, that would also be amenities that our citizens can enjoy. Now, it's in Miramar Beach primarily because Miramar Beach has a quarter of our citizens, roughly, within about a 5-mile area. So that is a highly populated area. It's one of our oldest developments, and it's a development that's sorely underserved by any kind of amenities, much less tourist amenities. So if we build something, it will enhance our tourist industry, which will put heads in beds, which is the goal of the Tourist Development Council. And it will also allow us to have amenities for our citizens. And these are things that have been asked for years and years and years. So this is an opportunity to provide that, and to provide it in a place where a quarter of our citizens live, which makes sense to me. And with that said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Stanton to come up and share with you all what he's got in mind.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ed Stanford, S-T-A-N-F-O-R-D, with Core Consulting. On behalf of the owners of the Golf Garden property, I want to thank you for the time tonight and for the time that you've given us over the past several months to contemplate the purchase of 25 acres of the Golf Garden property. The Golf Garden property is located less than a half mile from the Okaloosa County, Walton County line on the north side of the road, generally at the intersection of Driftwood Road and Highway 98. The property is 660 feet wide and about 2,400 feet deep, and sits adjacent to the Emerald Bay Golf Course, and then there's a large tract of land to the east of it that is currently vacant. As part of our this property was actually under contract, and as part of our due diligence process, we actually were contemplating commercial development, apartments, single family for this property. That was the land use and zoning for it. And but we started talking with Public Works and planning about the potential of connecting the Walton Way alignment with Highway 98, and that ended up being a negotiation and a conversation that has happened over the last 9 months. We have the approval from DOT in Walton County to permit the signal there at the intersection of Driftwood Road and Highway 98, as long as the owners of the Golf Garden provide a 50-foot right-of-way that connects basically 98 to Walton Way. We're committed to doing that. We're right in the middle of the tail end, hopefully, of describing that easement and possibly some of the flexibility that we might need as the county contemplates and moves forward with the design of the signal. So that being said, I have a very, very simple drawing here of the golf garden property. We are considering 25 acres to be sold to the county if they choose to do so, and would like to develop the 10 acres of commercial along the Highway 98 frontage. As part of that, we will provide that easement and ultimately the right-of-way that will connect Walton Way to 98. And, we feel like this is an opportunity for the county to purchase something that is has a long-lasting effect on the surrounding community. The 25 acres could just be the beginning. There's 60 more acres next to it. I'm not going to say it's all upland, but there is land there. And we feel that there's a possibility of ultimately constructing some public amenities that would enhance life in Miramar Beach. Yes,
I got a
Commissioner?
question.
Sure.
The parcel is parcel 2 on what I've got here. That's 25, almost 25 and a half acres.
Yes, right.
Right.
Mhm.
And you want to keep 10 of that 25?
No, 10, it's 35 and a half acres
Okay.
total.
All right.
And we want to keep a minimum of 10 acres along the frontage. We're contemplating selling you 25 acres of it.
Is there another 35 acre plot out there next to this?
No, there's only a 61 acre plot.
This thing here doesn't make sense to me. I'm showing one parcel at 35 acres and one parcel at 25
It's the
acres.
same parcel minus the 10 acres.
The
Well,
frontage
that
road.
doesn't say that.
The entire parcel, it's 35 acres. What we would
Okay.
contemplate selling is 25 of the 35.
So if you, based upon this right here, the selling price or the asking price is 6.5 million.
Yes, sir.
Is that the current price?
That's the
Which
current
is-
price.
It's higher than the appraised value
Okay,
and the average appraised value.
all right.
Does that help?
Well, I've got the owner here tonight,
Oh, do you?
and it really depends on what your wishes are tonight, whether we are going to consider selling at an appraised value. We are not aware of the appraised value. We don't know anything about what your appraisal says. We only know what the demand market is for this particular piece of property, and that is, significantly, well, it's pretty high, to be honest with you. It's a little bit higher than the 6.5 million that the owner is asking.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, so the 10 acres frontage row, obviously, is the most valuable typically in real estate. And I can't see, unless we can really do some, really stretching to get TDC funds to pay for anything in that front area. So is the goal here for the 25 acres, Danny, was the goal for the 25 acres to be TDC? All right. I really can't, it would be a stretch to find something where the TDC, unless Jay would tell me something wrong, a stretch for the front property be purchased by TDC funds.
Well, that's part of the reason why we're here too, though, is to understand a little bit more about the limitations and expectations of the county. We see this as a green spot within Miramar Beach, and it's an opportunity. How we get there, I'm not sure yet. I have participated in the buying and selling of property to the county, and at that point, it was a smaller property that was down on Driftwood Road, and we utilized three appraisals, and we took the average of the appraisals at the time, and we eventually cut a deal with the county. But, in this case, it's a little bit different. It's a unique piece of property, it's a larger piece of property, and it has a significant number of uses that are marketable, and folks will pay, high dollars for those things.
So would you point out the east boundary line of this parcel you're talking about?
This is the east boundary here?
Right here.
Yep.
Okay.
This is the west boundary, this is Emerald Bay, and this is that.
All right. On the east boundary, as it enters 98, is that right across the street from Driftwood?
Yes, sir.
So we're trying to get DOT to put a light in there, but I think one of the parameters, and Jay or somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's got to connect all the way up.
Correct.
All the way.
Yes.
And I've already heard from a lot of people up there that don't want that extra road put in there.
Okay.
And but the traffic light's needed there, there's no doubt about it. And it's whether or not we can get it put in there without the connection all the way up to Walton Way?
Well, I would have to
I
let
ain't
Public
asking
Works.
you to
and-
speak on
Yeah,
that.
but actually, I do agree that a signal is needed there based on my understanding of circulation in Miramar Beach. Without this signal, I think there's going to be some significant problems there, but that's just me looking at a map and going, okay, well, I can see trouble in the future. But I think that the road is a contentious issue. We've talked with the neighbors to the north, and they've come to us and said, hey, we don't necessarily want that, but at the same time, there are some enhancements in their own neighborhoods that they've discussed with me and in front of the board as we've pursued the land use change and the zoning changes over the last several months. So we've had a very open and honest communication with the surrounding neighbors. That's one reason why we're here tonight, is because, and I think you'll hear from a lot of them, and they will probably suggest that they would be interested in that remaining a green space and not being developed into multifamily, single-family, or significant commercial activity.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I appreciate your presentation, and I think I'd like to get this thing moving. It's getting late in the evening.
Excuse me, are you asking for us to look into the possibility?
What I'd like,
We already have appraisal.
what I'd like is to give Mr. Tusa the ability to negotiate, to see if we can get, and I'll make that a motion, that we give Mr. Tusa the ability to negotiate with the owner and see if we can come to an agreement that's at the market or a lot closer than what we're at now. But give Mr. Tusa the ability to negotiate the
That's
purchase.
your motion?
That's a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? You look like you want to say something.
There's been so much contention over the road leading from 98. I just don't see moving forward. Are those pickleball courts, or, what do we have? What do you have designed?
He has nothing.
That's a flex. All we've done here is done a conceptual of what could be here. We have an amphitheater with flex space there that can be used for concerts, theater, presentations, et cetera, et cetera. And in the back, we have a flex space, which is a really recreation center, indoor recreation center. We can send this to you in PDF if you'd like to look at it further. As far as the road goes, I understand that it may be a contentious item. However, from a macro perspective and looking at Miramar Beach as a whole, I believe in my heart of hearts and understanding the way things have been designed and things are currently operated, that the road is a necessity to alleviate some of the, what I would consider, congestion, at least congestion, if not a dangerous situation for some of the, our daily travelers down that road.
Well, to answer, to use TDC funds, as Sydney pointed out a while ago, you have to have a tourist reason. So what he's got in the back of that is like a gym. Some of the high-end tourist opportunities that you have, let me back up. I know a little bit about travel ball and how much money is made. There was 2 articles in the paper, one about Panama City, one about Fort Walton, in the last 2 weeks. The amounts of money that they're generating that are all tourist dollars. So if we have a place in the back that can use basketball, volleyball, and then in the week they could play pickleball there, but have those type of uses, you draw tournaments in. Those are high demographic tournaments. We don't have any space in the western part of South Walton for events. So, in discussing with Mr. Tusa, that's a need in the west end of the county to have event space that would draw people to the. What we're trying to accomplish is to draw tourists to the west end of the county, particularly, but mainly South Walton, that are not here strictly for the beach, but are here for ball game tournaments, concerts, events, whatever they are. And this is the last parcel that's big enough to do any of that. If we let this parcel go by, and there's the 61 acres that's adjoining most of it's wet. But one of the other significant areas of concern in the west end of the county is stormwater. We got to have a place to put stormwater that doesn't go in the bay. Well, this is a place we could dump, for lack of a better term, that we could run the stormwater into. Don't y'all quote me on that. But when I can just see it, Gladwell proposes dump.
You said it.
That's what I'm going with.
But this is a place where we could send our stormwater to that could filter back as it did 150 years ago, which is what Panama City is doing now. They have a preservation park that's got the woodland restored so that the stormwater goes into this area, it filters, and it's not going into the bay untreated.
All right, so the ask is to negotiate.
So the ask would be to negotiate with the owner of the golf garden, negotiate that price, and also to give Mr. Tusa the ability to start looking at that 61 acres. Now, we can't, without the golf garden, the 61 acres it's going to be hard to get to, but this would be the ask, and this would give us the opportunity to build something really nice for the citizens of Miramar and to draw tourists to the businesses in Miramar that we had never done before.
Any more discussion? Ms. Harris?
I'm so glad I came back in town for this.
We're glad to have you.
We're missing you.
First off, did anybody ever think about asking the citizens like me that live in Miramar if we want this? I don't think so. But I came to one of y'all meeting up north, and y'all were going to buy all of Golf Gardens, all of it. Plus you were going to get the land across the street from the water thing to put the ballparks on for $4 million. And Jim Babby got up, y'all were fixing to vote on it. And Jim Babby got up and told y'all there was already a contract on the land. And Danny made the motion for y'all to go ahead and give Jay Tusa the right to go and talk to him about us buying it. Well now, if they had a contract on it for $6 million and we were only going to pay $4 million, I mean, that was a waste, so thank God y'all didn't pass that motion. But I run a high-rise resort, 19-story resort on 6 acres. Ask the people of Sandestin, they're Miramar, ask them, do they want this? Ask us. We rent by the week. All spring and summer, we rent Saturday to Saturday. Everybody does. That's why, as y'all know, you can't come across Mid-Bay Bridge on Saturday because everybody checks in on Saturday and everybody checks out on Saturday. Can't get in the grocery store, can't get anywhere. The Sleep-In Motel. Now, if y'all haven't been to the Sleep-In, you wouldn't spend the night there. The Sleep-In Motel rents for $228 a night. They don't do 3 nights hardly at all. These travel ball teams, I know, my son played on one forever. These travel ball teams don't pay $228 a night. And if they do, they got 6 kids in the room, 2 in each bed, and then they got blow-up mattresses. We have place for an amphitheater. We have room. Bill Chapman had the best idea ever, because I nearly blew a gasket when you paid Jay Odom $7 million for a piece of property. But I met with Jay, and Chapman is the one who convinced me not to blow a gasket on that, because he'd seen parking lots. You know, people down here, when you just hear a parking deck, you think of a junky old parking deck. But I think if Chapman would spend time showing pictures and having another public hearing on parking decks, I think if he doesn't run, the people in Walton County will convince him to run again, because we will get something great out of the $7 million property, and there's plenty of parking there for an amphitheater. And y'all are just jumping all around. If you could have bought the property for $4 million, and this guy jumps in and buys it for $6 million, we sure as hell don't need to pay $4 million for only a part of it.
Any more? Sir?
Don Peterson, Peterson. I live on Walton Way, where the proposal is to put the road through. I'd just like to point out that we don't need that road. I live down that road and I get out to 98 just fine. And all of my neighbors do too. And to put that road in there is just going to cause outside traffic to come in and make our neighborhood dangerous. We have no sidewalks in that area. And I just oppose it. If the road did have to go through, I would make it really not a nice road to travel on. I'd try to put as many bends and turns as you can on it. And also, I'd like to point out that the road is really wanted by the developer, by the seller. And I just want to say that if you put a traffic light at that intersection, it really increases the value of that frontage property, which is, a good reason to push for that intersection light to be in. So I just want to bring that point up and tell you that I oppose the road. But as far as the rec center and living in that neighborhood, I think would be great for my kids, my grandkids to come into that area and have a place to go, play baseball, swim in a pool, whatever it might be. And I think that goes for other of my neighbors. We love to have a good green area. And I just ask you to put a lot of thought into what we're doing here and consider us as we actually put you guys in office. So, thank you.
I don't think there'd be enough room for baseball at 25 acres, because I've done some research for the north end.
Sir, go ahead. Please state your name and spell it again.
Jim Thurman, Thurman, 324 Walton Way. I apologize for the sunglasses. I left it, sun was out. I didn't bring my regular glasses. If I need to see you all, I got to wear something. I live on Walton Way. I know Don, his wife, good people. Somebody made the mention they hadn't talked to the residents around there. Listen, I've been in more meetings with you all than I care to be at. I'm not a politician, and I don't even like to be involved in this, but I do like to have a safe community. And this place is going to get developed. I mean, it's a valuable piece of land. Like I said, I do this for a living. It's a valuable piece of land, and it's one of the few pieces of land left in Miramar Beach, which has 25% of the population, and we don't have anything. Now, I'm totally in favor of the land, of you all buying that 25 acres, but I'm also totally in favor of you buying that 25 acres at a market price. I don't think you need to overpay for anything, because if you do give this man a street light out in front, the value of his front 10 acres goes way up. Trust me, I know that. But the road coming through, we've been to several meetings and asked you to not put the road through because it's a hazard to our community. But I think we're looking at what's the worst case scenario here. This land's going to get developed. Anybody doesn't think that's a fool. We'd love for it to be a green space for us, the county, and if that road's going to go through, at least we won't have a huge apartment complex to deal with, or more housing. What we really need in Miramar Beach is more housing and more cars and more people. Trust me, we don't need that. We're getting 6 lanes of highway now that should be 8. So please consider making this a green space for the Miramar Beach area, especially the area that we live in, and if we can do something with that road, that's great. If that road has got to go through, trust me, I would rather be a green space there than I would a big development. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Ma'am, come up. David, you'll be next.
Hi, I'm Sandy Powley, Powley. I live in that community. I love Miramar Beach. I'm a little new here, but I love it. It's kind, it's gentle, it's sweet. I know those aren't words that we talk about with real estate. The truth is, you have 10 acres that you want to develop. I don't know how long a road has to be to make a turnaround, but I'm thinking that 10 acres is kind of enough. The rest of the green space would be fantastic. I came from a place that they said we couldn't build a park. We built a beautiful park. We have bike trails and swimming. Kids weren't in danger of being hit by a car. I don't know, I think we could do something to make everybody happy, and if you have 10 acres, I believe, even I, not as an engineer, think we can make a turnaround there with a light. So, thanks.
Thank you. David?
David Vaughn, V as in Victor, A-U-G-H-A-N. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here as both a citizen of Driftwood Estates in Miramar Beach and also on behalf of the South Walton Fire District. I have 2 points, none of which are very important, but I've been sitting here for 3.5 hours and I wasn't going to let it go without at least throwing in a little bit. First of all, I want to thank Danny Gladwell. I caught wind of this particular issue on Facebook through the Walton County Visioning, and from the department standpoint, it's a very small point to this whole thing with all the other considerations that everybody has. I want to stand in support of whether it's this particular property or any other property, because you guys are doing what I think is a great thing in approaching with Helen McCall and the other properties that you're developing for the community, with the community interest in mind, for both dual-use citizen and tourists alike. One thing that stood out to me that I have to speak to is a swimming pool. There's not a public swimming pool in Walton County. There are some secret spots that I've gotten guards trained at because we have to do training in the off-season, and I'm not going to reveal one of them, but I have to take them into Destin to the old YMCA pool, which is bought by Emerald Coast Fitness. It's just now a non-profit, but it's a private institution. And there's a private pool up in Freeport at Blue Water Bay. But there's nothing in Walton County proper for our community and or the tourists, for instance, on double red flag days or some other day where the beaches aren't the ideal situation. Getting both tourists and our community youth familiar with water safety. Of course, I'm always going to make my pitch. Drowning is the most preventable cause of death. Having a community pool is not, it's expensive, they're hard to maintain, they're hard to man, I get all that. But it mystifies me that Walton County doesn't have a community swimming pool to a standard. And so I'd like to thank Danny Gladwell for bringing that up and including that in the plan. And I would ask the commissioners, whether you get it done this year, next year, sometime in the future, please make that a priority. As a private citizen living here, I've got a young family, and this green space, whether it's this particular property or somewhere else, I'm all for adding this type of facility. So whether you can come to market value or all the other considerations that you have to contend with, I don't think you can go wrong with the approach. Thank you.
Ma'am. Bob, you'll be next. Please state your name and spell your last name.
My name is Claire Hook, H-O-O-K. I am 19 years old. I have lived at 11 Walton Way, one property away from the golf course, for 17 years. I grew up there. I have played in the streets. I vividly remember sitting in the middle of Walton Way, writing out in chalk, "We have Halloween candy, please come see us." We are full in Walton Way and on Forest Shore of people riding their bikes in the mornings, going for afternoon walks, going for walking, children on skateboards and other modes of transportation, filling our streets. And with the road connecting Walton Way to 98, the only way that you could remedy our neighborhood is to have this park. If you would like for us to stay safe, give us a space where we can be safe. I am in full support of that park. I would rather have an area where we have a public pool, public courts, any public area where we can draw more tourists, more economy. It would help us and the tourists. Our beaches cannot be the only draw for our tourists. They are overcrowded. There's not enough parking. The residents know not to go to the beach during the summer because there is no point, because they are overcrowded with tourists. If you think that that is a good draw for Miramar Beach, you are mistaken. You need another draw for tourism, and a park would be a perfect place to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We got one more, Danny.
I just like to apologize for having to leave. I think I caught my wife's bug.
Don't give it to them.
Yeah, get away from it.
I saw everybody move away from it.
Bob Brook, B-R-O-O-K-E. I thought when Commissioner Glidewell started out, he was right on the right track about diversification of the economy, but diversification of the economy in Walton County means getting away from tourism as our dominant element of the economy. Then he went off on the path that's saying this is all for tourism, so I'm not quite sure where he was going with that. And also diversification to the north of the county is the real objective in diversification, I think, anyway. But aside from that, I looked at the item on the agenda, and it's appraisals for purchasing golf garden property. And I guess
already have appraisals, Bob.
But that,
oh, it's just.
that was my mistake.
Oh, okay. So this is, you want to proceed beyond that point. And what were the appraisals? I'm sorry, was it?
Can't discuss them.
Oh, okay, I understand. But I also heard a number of people say that the real value to this property is the 10 acres that are along the commercial avenue of Route 98. And so I would think that the value of the property that's not on 98 or not included in that 10 acres would be much lower than the value of the 10 acres that are on 98. So I just think from a property use and a property value point of view, the commissioners ought to consider that if the property was listed for $6 million, then this property shouldn't be worth more than $2 million at the most. If the county gets anything more than that, or is willing to pay anything more than that, they'd be making a big mistake.
Well,
thank you.
Just a quick comment. I believe I believe we need to diversify our economy. That's a must, and I'm sort of partial to the developing the north end too, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to diversify our tourist industry as well as moving towards diversifying the entire county. So I agree with you. And the second point is what we're doing tonight is giving Mr. Tusa the ability to negotiate with the group. So we're not.
But if we're looking at diversifying the tourist industry in the context of bringing more tourists to Walton County and more tourists to South Walton County, we need to go back first and look at the infrastructure and what the infrastructure in South Walton can bear. And I've advocated that for years, and I've never got anybody to listen very hard to what I've been trying to say. But to just keep adding more and more tourism and more, spending more and more money from TDC to bring more and more tourists in here and to buy more property that can build more attractions for tourism is not the right way to go without some forethought and analysis of what the county can bear in the way of tourism, in particular South Walton, and what the infrastructure in South Walton can handle.
Well, the target is for the areas that are outside the summer. I think I agree with you. We got plenty in the summer, but I think Mr. Tusa can show you some numbers that what we call the shoulder season or the winter months are not, we could expand some opportunities there and make our businesses more profitable and more tax.
One more comment. It comes down to priorities, and is this the highest priority? We talked about no money for parking garages, things like that. There are other priorities. We ought to look at where we spend our money.
Mr. Stafford,
Thank you, Bob.
Flip that thing back around, please. Okay, while you're standing there, point out about where that 10 acres is going to be.
10 acres basically runs about 660 feet north.
Okay. And what you put on there as a preliminary possible, whatever could go in there, looks like a multi-story, or is that a parking lot? Okay.
And that can be arranged in
Well, either way, you're gonna need an entrance or a road, or if the county wasn't to purchase the property. But if we did, we would have to have some type of easement from 98 on the east side going up to where that starts, and we would more than likely have to put some type of road or in there to the north, just so we can access all the different areas of that 25 acres. You wouldn't have one particular road, I don't believe. Okay, just wanted to see approximately where that hit there.
Anybody else? Sir? Okay.
Kevin Kelly, K-E-L-L-Y. I've lived next to the Golf Garden for 17 years now. It's a beautiful neighborhood, beautiful community. I think the last thing we need is more congestion, more apartments. I think there's a lot of talk about the tourists, that's great, but it'd be nice to see more about the citizens who live here. And it'd be nice to see, take a look at what you can do, not only for tourists, but for the people that live here. So, going to the beach now, you can't go with being buzzed by helicopters or having a billboard in front of you. So maybe the tourists would like some quiet green space as well. Thank you.
Ma'am?
You got two ma'ams coming up.
Hello. My name is Cynthia Bowers, B-O-W-E-R-S. I live at 497 Walton Way, and I've lived there since the 1st of February with my family, 5 children, 1 dog, and a husband. I get the thing about the infrastructure that Mr. Brooks, I think, spoke about, but if you look at that, if that's your sole reason, then adding 600 apartment homes doesn't make sense. If we can't support the tourism that we already have, then adding more homes to that area, I think 250 single-family homes and 600 apartment homes was one of the proposals that, when we spoke with the developer, was one of the plans, and that doesn't make much sense to me. Also, the green space, I have 5 kids. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me. Send them to the park, out of the house kind of thing. I mean, we have a pool, that's fine, but if they want to see all their friends, I'm not having, 30 kids come to my house from the neighborhood to swim in my pool. They can go to the public pool. The one in Phoenix Springs is awesome. We visited there with friends. So I just would like you to really think about us that live in that neighborhood and the voters that live in that neighborhood and this is the last spot in Miramar Beach, really. So if you could just think about us, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
One quick comment while he's walking up.
Yeah.
The one thing I think I would like to say for transparency right now is the appraised values are going to be for the best use. And if everyone in this room understands it's an apartment building like the owner says, these appraisals are going to come in high. So if we choose to purchase this, and you say you paid way over appraised value for green space, I just want you to understand, the appraisals are going to come in for the best use. Am I right, Jay? That's how appraisals come in. So because we sit here, we say we need parking, now we don't need parking. 2 years ago, we did not need parking garages. Now we need them. And it seems like every time we sit up here, I can just see the angst in ours trying to do the right thing.
That lady over there, I think.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Lori Eccles, E-C-H-O-L-S. I'm at 368 Shore Drive, and I'm sick of the tourism. I've heard it out the wang since I got here this afternoon. Y'all worry so much about, I know that's where you get your money, and that's great, but we're also the ones that pay the money. And I feel like we need to have a green space, and thank you so much, Danny, for listening to us, because nobody else does. I've emailed you 3 times, hadn't heard a word from you, Trey. But at any rate, I just am sick of, I was sickened. Absolutely wanted to throw up on what I heard of what's happening out on 38. I moved here in 1982. Man, you didn't even know where Sandestin was because there were no lights. You had the Green Knight, you had an IGA, and you had the Big Chicken at the Tom Thumb, and that's how you told people you lived at Sandestin. If you go past the chicken, you're going too far. You got to turn around at the chicken. All this, y'all people, I don't see how you sit up there. It has bothered me to my core what I have heard today. Bothered me to my core. It's absolutely sickening. We need a place for people to be able to come. You sit there and you talk about the beach. You talk about all the people. I wouldn't live out on 38. Those folks got it bad out there. I thought we had it bad in Miramar Beach. But you've talked about all these parking garages, talked about everything you're going to do for 38. Oh, you're going to do everything. Because, well, we're part of South Walton, too, in Miramar Beach. And we pay just as much money, if not more, because we got more people there right now. And it pisses me off. I am telling you, I am burned up about this whole thing.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you.
But at any rate, we need a green space. We need a place for our people to go to.
Understood.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, call the question.
All right, we had to call the question.
That's the owner of the property that's handing up.
Do what?
That's the owner of the property.
Well, we've had to call the question.
I'll recall it. If he's
Okay, sir, come on up.
My name is Mark Kaltz, K-A-L-T-Z, and I am one of the owners of the property. And I represent the group. I'm the managing partner of the development. Now, just a couple things. I've lived in Destin for 33 years. I'm not a developer. This is an investment to me. My mother's an owner of it. My first college roommate. It's just a group of people. We've owned it for 25 years. Okay? So just a couple points. Like Ed pointed out a few meetings ago, we're getting older. I thought I was going to send my children to college on selling this property, and they're out of school. I've got a doctor who's gone through all that. But it's time to sell it. And the economics of the business have gotten to the point where costs are rising, revenues are not. It's just time to sell it. I've got a group of over 20 people I represent that own it. We've had it for 25 years. Nothing would make me happier than if I rode by there and there was a park, okay? It's the last biggest piece in Miramar Beach. Now, supply and demand. I've got in this past week 4 letters of intent to buy the property. They can put 450 apartments on that 25 acres. At $20,000 a door, that's $9 million, okay? We're not asking $9 million. I'm willing to take a haircut, like I told Mr. Glidewell one time, I'm willing to take a haircut, but I don't want to get scalped, okay? So they did appraisals, but nobody ever told us, nobody's ever approached us about what we might take.
Well, so you'll know, we have had appraisals done.
Yes, sir.
We wouldn't have anybody reach out to you unless the board directs our staff to come and talk to you if you want to negotiate it or agree to it or whatever.
Yes, sir. Okay, I understand. Thank you. So, we stand ready. It is going to be developed. I'm sure y'all are in favor of property owners' rights. We've got the right to develop it. The DOT wants a light there. We're going to give them the easement. We're going to give, whether you all buy it or not, we're going to give 3 acres, which is worth well over $1 million. And by the way, the prices that I've heard tonight, $2 million for a half an acre. I got 25 acres for $6 million. If you divide it out, you're at about $260,000 an acre. Now, here's the other thing. It's the last piece of property, guys. It's the last piece. So once it's gone, and trust me this, it's going to be gone. We're just been out there since I was 35 years old, and I'm 61, 62 now. So, but we stand ready to talk to y'all. I promised one of the commissioners that I would not sign anything until you all made a decision. So it's certainly in your court. If we can help, we stand ready to. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, sir.
Call the question.
Ma'am, we've had to call the question, so there will be no more questions from the floor or comments. We have a motion on the floor to have Mr. Tusa get in contact with these people and see if we can come to a fair price for both of us, but especially for us. And, that's what we need to vote on. So all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
real quick, if I can get some clarification. So when we talked about this previously, we had a couple of different conversations going on, and one was negotiating.
Give them a few minutes. Mr. Chairman, if you'll let them bail out of here.
Yeah, stick around for a second.
Hayden, y'all leaving?
Well, y'all are putting us late on deadline, we're not gonna make our airtime.
Well, do it tomorrow morning.
Do you wanna call my boss and tell him?
I don't mind. Who is it? You done it again?
Hopefully he's not watching this live right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to add that Well, nobody's up there talking.
Okay, let's settle down and get started.
Just real quick, just to follow that last agenda item, just as I was saying before everybody started leaving the room, so we had two conversations going at the same time about the golf garden property. So one was the appraisals, we had the appraisals done, and it was negotiating. The other was a feasibility study on the sports complex. So that's something that we kind of just put aside when we said we weren't.
I don't recall the feasibility study.
I didn't think you would. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
I think that'd be getting ahead of it.
So we talked about a feasibility study at the same time we were talking about negotiating to see what the best use of the property was from a sports park standpoint. And so we decided not to move forward with that since we weren't moving forward with the negotiations. So I just kind of wanted to see what the board's interested in. Do you want to see what we can negotiate and then maybe see about a feasibility study?
For me, from what I've seen on the placard, I get an understanding of probably the lay of the land and all that. So I got a good idea that if we make this deal, it wouldn't be hard to go back in there and design layouts of courts, amphitheaters, whatever it may be.
Well, this is something that looks at competitive set of what's in the area for sports. If there's a certain thing of sports, Commissioner Gala mentioned earlier about certain particular sports, and so we need to make sure that is the best use of that facility. So that's where that feasibility study would come.
Well, I understand that, but the best use is going to be determined by the five setting up here, is it not?
Well, I understand that, but that's up to you if you want to get information for you to make an informed decision.
Well, you can do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know that needs to be addressed at this stage of the game.
Well, that's why I just want to ask you, because we were talking about that concurrently.
This is me.
Yeah.
Got four of us up here.
Go ahead.
I think the only concern I have, and if it turns around to only being pickleball and, after we look at it, pickleball and a pool, which would be great.
Yeah.
I personally have a question of whose funds are we going to use?
That's something that we should ask ourselves, depending on what the use is. I mean, if it's marketable, to tourists who are coming in town, then certainly we can use TDT funds for that. But I just don't want to get ourselves in a situation where it's not marketable. So, but I think we can negotiate, see where that comes back, and then we can take the next step when I come back with the negotiated price.
Could
Thank
we ask them to go ahead and to start finding out about the 61 acres next, who owns it?
He can do that on his own, but let's go ahead and move forward.
Okay.
We've had a motion and a second and a
Okay.
vote.
I just wanted to ask about the feasibility study, but if y'all are good just to give me direction to hold off until we, do the negotiations,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Mr. Glidewell, did you have anything else?
No, sir.
Mr. Nick?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, I got about an hour's worth of stuff, Mr. Chairman, but it can wait till next meeting.
Finish, okay? Do you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Ms. Nipper? I'm good. Mr. Chapman?
I'm good.
I have just a couple of things. One, the state legislature passed a bill, House Bill 453, and it has to deal with motorized scooters. What I would like said, I've done some research on this, and a lot of the cities that have allowed motorized scooters into their traffic have started doing away with that because it's so dangerous. The way some of the systems that I've seen are set up, that you can rent one with an app. The app doesn't say how old you are. The app doesn't say if you have a driver's license. The app doesn't say if you're qualified to drive it even if you have a driver's license. So before this becomes let's catch up to the scooter industry, I would like for our legal staff to go back and look at some things that we can and can't do. Now, understand, I know the legislature has tied our hands on some things, but let's find out exactly what we can and can't do. I personally don't think South Walton is the place for scooters with the traffic volume we have on 30A, the traffic volume we have on Old 98, and that will be where the majority of the scooter traffic will be. So I would like to find out exactly what we can do, and then let's develop a plan of what we want to do.
Okay.
Okay?
I can certainly do that.
All right. Another thing is, we talked about at our last meeting in Defeniak, naming of the golf course in Defeniak. Do any of y'all have any names?
Yes. Eagle Springs. Eagle Springs. We got 5 spring-fed lakes on that property, so I think springs ought to be in there.
Yeah.
Eagles sometimes nest out there.
Yeah, there are eagles. There have been eagles out there in the past, and I think there's one out there now. Does anybody else have any?
I like the Defeniak Springs Golf Course.
Well, I tell you, I'm kind of leery of trying to name it Defeniak because Defeniak Springs Country Club was the name of it, and it failed. And a lot of the reason it failed was because the public thought it was private. Anytime you have something like that named Country Club, although it was not private, people thought it was. I just think that that would be too close to the other name. And, if that's what the board wants, of course, that's what we'll name it.
What about Walton Golf and Recreation Center?
Well, that's been brought up. I've got quite a few, but I'm not going to read them all.
Dream World.
Yeah, one of them was Eagle Springs. I had several people say Chautauqua, something other. You know, you ever tried to spell Chautauqua? Not an easy thing to do. I can't do it. So what we want is something that's easy, when somebody goes on the website, goes on the internet and Googles golf in Walton County or golf in Defeniak Springs, this will come up, and they won't have to spell Chautauqua, you know, or the Eagle Springs is much easier, but, I wanted to kind of stay away from naming it after a person. You know, when you name it after a person, you're also naming it after that person's history. And we don't always know what this person's history was, and I don't want 5 years down the road, they say, oh, well, you named it Tony Anderson Golf Course, and he was the biggest scoundrel in the country. So.
How about Eagle Springs Golf and Recreation Park?
And I want, just a reminder that the board does have a policy when you're including someone's name and naming a facility, they've got to be dead.
I might be after this meeting.
Yeah, so.
I think it's important to keep golf and recreation.
I think it is too, so.
We name it a park because it's a park.
Yeah.
So, I don't mind Eagle Springs, I don't mean.
I got a suggestion. Being that it's approaching the 100-year mark since 1924, what about historic Defeniak Springs Golf Club?
You still not crazy about naming it Defeniak?
I am too. Defeniak has not in any way assisted us in trying to save that facility, whether it's money or support or anything else. So I'd like to stay away from that if we can. If you want to go with Eagle Springs Golf and Rec Park, I can live with that, except the scorecard's gonna have to be about that long.
Well, you can narrow it down the
just say-
scorecard.
yeah.
You know, you
I'm
can just
kidding,
put.
Tony.
I'm not in the mood for
I
kidding
know.
right now. So, would you make that a motion, or?
I'll make that a motion, that we name it Eagle Springs Golf and Recreational Park.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion from the audience? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The new name for the Definiak Springs Golf and Recreational Facility is Eagle Springs. So, that's all I have. Citizens' request. Kim, you coming, Kim?
She said.
Kim, you've been here about 4 hours now.
Commissioners, this is a request to close a portion of Highway 38 from Laura Hamilton Boulevard to Watercolor Boulevard from 6:30 a.m. till 10 a.m. on October 13th of 2019. For the Stockton project, we've done this will be the fourth year. They have met with the outdoor review committee and it's been approved by the Walton Sheriff's Office, Walton Fire District, and Walton County Public Works. So they have done what we asked all to do in this instance.
Okay.
And they're here for your consideration because of this closed road lines of Highway 38.
Has anything changed from last year as far as where you put this on?
No, sir, it hasn't.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion from the audience? I mean, from us? Any discussion from the audience? I know you got a big speech, but all you can do is talk us out of it. All in favor say aye. Aye. All
Thank you.
opposed say nay. Thank you. Planning, you want to take a short break? Please. Okay. We need to take a short little break before we get into the planning. I know we all have staff.
I think we all heard it.
We'll continue with the planning agenda. Mr. Gladwell will be here shortly, but we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, sir. I noticed that at the top of the last page of the agenda, it says, please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. I will adhere to that.
Please do that.
Hurry up.
Don't do that just for me.
The or less is preferred. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on our agenda tonight is item number 48. This is a request to approve an amended planning fee schedule and authorize the chair to sign the planning fee resolution amendment. We presented this for information at the last Board of County Commissioners meeting. And in general, we have sort of reorganized this list to make it much easier for planners to follow. It's also an effort to make sure that we are consistent with the resolutions in our planning software. And we actually reduced a couple of the fees to a more reasonable level also.
Well, Mac, unless I missed it, I couldn't tell you which one of this on this list was an add, an increase, a deleted, or whatever. There was nothing redlined, at least I haven't seen it.
We tried to give you a narrative right after that page that explains what went up and what went down and what our thinking was there.
Okay, I see that.
Explanation of fee schedule changes, I think we had 2 pages of that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion by the board? Seeing none, any discussion by the audience? It means you, Lee. All right, seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no.
Thank you, sir. The next item is our first reading of the Land Development Code update to Chapter 1. I'll ask Kristen to update us on that particular.
I won't go through this unless you just really need me to. This is just the first reading. The Planning Commission recommended approval with no changes. We're just cleaning some stuff up here.
Does anybody want her to read the whole thing?
Motion to approve.
Line by line.
Any discussion from the audience? No, from the board? Sorry. Any discussion from the audience? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Sorry, Commissioner, we weren't sure you were coming back. Oh, I'm coming.
Okay, CJ's. Well, heck, there ain't nobody here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This moves us to the quasi-judicial section of the agenda.
Yes. Mac, I think it's just you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide to this board will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Have any of the commissioners had any ex parte communication?
No, ma'am.
I'm seeing no from all of the commissioners. Ready to go.
The first item is the 7 Palms at Inlet Beach plat. It's a request to approve by final plat. It was reviewed by Bob Baranti, prepared by Rare Earth, Inc., and submitted by Shannon Clatchy on behalf of 7 Palms at Inlet Beach, LLC. They're requesting approval to develop 5 single-family lots on approximately 1.26 acres with the future land use of residential and a zoning district of neighborhood infill. Project's located off US 98, down South Wall Street to South Pompano, and then east on South Pompano. Identified by the parcel number in your package. This particular development was previously approved by minor development order. This is the final stage in that particular process. Here to answer any questions you might have. I'm not sure the applicant is here anymore, but this item meets the requirements of the Chapter 177 of Florida statutes and is consistent with the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan.
Did you
And we'd like to request that the staff report be entered into the record.
What's the board's wishes?
Ma'am?
I'm sorry, what was the height on those?
The height? I think it was 30 buildings.
Not to exceed 50 feet.
Motion to approve.
That's on the plat?
No, that's not actually on the plat, but that was in the development.
Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? Any discussion from the audience?
Is that with all the conditions?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Any discussion from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 3, on our planning agenda, the Preserve at Paradise Cove plat. We have a request to table this item, and it will come back as soon as it's right.
All right, motion to the table.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no.
Thank you, Commissioners. That moves us to the last item on our agenda, the Palm Court subdivision plat. We have a request to continue this to the QJ meeting here in July, on July 25th, in this location at 9 a.m.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Lee, you have something?
Can I make a suggestion real quick?
I can't hear you.
Can I make a suggestion?
Come on.
Yes, come on.
It's not about this, but I want to just ask something after.
Can it wait till after we finish this?
Yes.
Wait, are you gonna ask all the commissioners or just one of them?
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Come on up.
Get up here.
after this item.
All right.
Okay.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Now, Lee,
Thank you. That's all.
just understand, you're keeping us from our
I know it's
children.
quick, I promise. Just wanted to throw out a suggestion of possibly considering, if you would, moving the citizen requests up higher on the agenda. I felt sorry for that poor woman. I mean, usually there are people that don't really come to these meetings often, and it would just be, just a thought. Just a-
We're adjourned.